Minutes to Win It podcast. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. This is Russell Clay at Russell J. Clay. Big games tonight. You got Spurs Warriors, and it's just a exciting slate to deal with. I'm excited.
Yeah, no, this is going to be a fun one. And I mean, we kind of have some opinions on tonight's slate, but who knows? It could always go, you know?
It looks chalky. It looks I mean, as far as the top plays go, I mean, you're looking at DeMarcus Cousins and James Harden as being your favorite options tonight. So it looks like everything's set in pieces for you, but NBA is never certain.
Right. Who knows? Boogie could sprain his ankle and then run into the hallway within the first. Yeah, I'm just jinxing everything. I'm just throwing out all the bad juju right now.
Yeah, Shabazz Muhammad only sees 12 minutes tonight after seeing 30 the last week. You never know, but
yeah. But no, in general, I think we're looking at Boogie as you want to pretty much set him into your lineup right now.
Yeah, he should really come programmed already. Tell DK and FanDuel to just put him into my lineups already. But looking at point guard tonight, not too many injuries, at least new ones that we've been dealing with. You're looking at Goran Dragic, who's still out. We were talking before the show, Miami-Chicago, not a game we're on at all.
No, that's looking like a low-scoring sort of fist fight, and I just don't trust really anyone in that game, but especially at point guard.
Yeah, I mean, just on such a big slate, there's other high-scoring games to target.
Right.
I just X that game off your list tonight. We're not even going to talk about it. You do have your top options up there. You got Curry, John Wall, but neither worth seem to be paying up for tonight just because of the other options. We both came into the show just saying Kemba Walker.
Yeah. He's had over 25 shot attempts in 3 of the last 4 games. It seems like the game flow or anything like that is kind of irrelevant for him now. He's going to get his shots, and the price especially on DraftKings, is just low enough where you kind of want to work him in. I understand if there are other high-priced options tonight, but I'm really trying to work him into whatever lineups I can.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you there. I mean, it just looks like a great game to target. And, Sacramento's been bottom 10 against point guards this season. And Walker's had a 30% usage rate this month. So it's up 4% from his season average. And, I mean, like you mentioned, he's shooting the ball a ton. And without Batum, he just gets a little bit more usage on offense. So
right.
I definitely like Walker if you're paying up for point guard tonight.
So I think there's if you're not going there, I think we're probably paying down tonight.
Yep. Sort
of looking at some of the mid-range options. I know you mentioned Emmanuel Mudiay, 5,200 on FanDuel and 5,800 on DraftKings. He's been extremely consistent over the past few games, and it seems like he's getting the minutes as well. So that's a really nice play for point guard.
Yeah, I like that game in general. I mean, just the 206 Vegas total, I think it's lower compared to guys like Houston or the games like Houston and New Orleans, but I mean, it's a nice game for offense. I think Hawks and Nuggets have kind of been on the average ends of defense this season, so I don't think it's a bad matchup for Moody, and he's getting a ton of minutes. And like you mentioned, I just think he's the more economical play tonight because you're paying up for other options.
I think Tony Parker's an interesting piece of that San Antonio Golden State game, but as we just talked about, Mudiay is kind of like in that same range. So I think he's an interesting play, but Mudiay, you probably want more shares of him if you're building tournament lineups.
Yeah, and you kind of got, I mean, the San Antonio Golden State is so intriguing because it's 2 of the best teams in the league,
right?
And you'll want to get some exposure to it, but it's not a great matchup for a lot of those guys. I mean, I don't mind Parker. I think Parker's actually a great tournament play just because you're kind of pivoting off guys like Jeremy Lin and Mudiay there. So,
right.
And we've seen Parker have big games before.
But so that San Antonio Golden State game, you instantly look at it and you're like, oh, fantasy points galore. But then you break down some of the individual matchups and they just don't really make as much sense for the value.
Yeah, I mean, especially at Curry and Draymond Green at their prices. We'll talk about Kawhi Leonard a little bit later, but he's probably my likely guy if I'm going to choose from that game. But I just can't see taking any of the guards on the Golden State side tonight.
Right.
But there's another guy. If Nicholas Batum sits, you're going to see Jeremy Lin pick up some more minutes. Coming off a really solid game against New York. Maybe it was the narrative of playing the Knicks again or something, but I went 26, 5, and 5 in 40 minutes. So I definitely like him tonight if Batum sits, and even though because he's coming off the bench, no Jeremy Lamb, or he's on the wrong side of questionable tonight, but a nice matchup against the Kings.
And one last one, Drew Holiday at 6,400 against Houston. Again, you're probably still moving down to Moutier on DraftKings, but I think he's an interesting play and sort of a dark horse to get 40 fantasy points tonight.
Yeah. I mean, he has that upside. He's a great fantasy points per minute player, and obviously the matchup against Houston is nice. So I'm definitely with you there. I think those kind of that 6,000 range guys are going to be sneaky tonight because you're either paying up a little bit more or you're paying down. So It's a nice contrarian move. Looking at shooting guard, it's pretty obvious tonight. James Harden, your triple-double king. Dwight Howard doubtful tonight, so you're going to see Harden take over the game. And I mean, 2 triple-doubles in the last 3 games without Howard, and a matchup against New Orleans. Like Boogie, plug him in.
I just don't. After the last 3 games, I mean, his usage is way back up. Even more so than we've sort of seen in terms of the peripheral sort of statistics. So I think you kind of just have to ride this one out. He's still at a reasonable price for what James Harden is, and I just think this is going to be a crazy usage game for him.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, there's enough value on tonight's slate where you can fit Cousins and Harden into a slate. So, I mean, that's my goal tonight. That's my Harden Boogie. There's no other way.
Yeah, I mean, you hate to force yourself into something, but it just seems like those two are the clear. And paying down doesn't necessarily make there isn't like a value play that makes sense. At that position, that's like, oh, well, I'm still going to be missing that 40 points that they're going to be getting on him, Yeah.
I mean, shooting guards, it's a weak position tonight. So you rather just kind of take that 50 point game from Harden and just run with it at that position because there's value elsewhere. Looking at other shooting guard options on DK, Tyreek Evans, interesting tournament play as always, but definitely going to be low round. Not a bad matchup against Houston, so it does have me intrigued, but because of the status of tonight's slate, just a GPP play for me.
Yeah, no, you don't want to be playing him in cash. He's been pretty inconsistent lately, but he always has the potential to sort of win big in that spot. So, I mean, 40 to 50 points, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah. There's a pretty significant price difference from Victor Oladipo and on DK and DraftKings tonight. 7,200 on DK and just 6,200 on FanDuel. Kind of an interesting play because he's been getting more minutes lately and been playing well. Even the games he played before he was injured, after missing the 2 games, he was solid. 48 DK points, 30, 43, 35, 37. So, I mean, he's definitely in play tonight. I think people are going to be off him because Memphis is still intimidating as a defense, even though haven't been that great.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a game people look at and instantly just kind of back away from. So on FanDuel, I really like him as a play. On DraftKings, it's going to be a little harder to fit him in just because of the 2 players we mentioned before. But if you can, it's not a bad idea because, yeah, he's a good matchup in that game.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely kind of taking a different angle if you go rostering him because it kind of changes the complexion of the rest of your lineup. So I don't hate it. I still think he's a better play on FanDuel. I don't mind him in cash just because there is a lot of value on FanDuel, and it's kind of a little bit easier, I guess you could say, to make a lineup there tonight.
Right.
But going any lower, I mean, like we mentioned, I mean, Harden's kind of guy you want to pay up for because there's not a lot of value down here. You like Avery Bradley at that mid-range price. He's been pretty solid of late, averaging 17, 3, and 3 in the last 6 games. You can always count on him for minutes. For it's in that 30 to 35 range on the nightly. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, he's a decent value at 5,600. So it's not like he's killing your cap either. So that's a nice play there. I do like that Washington-Boston game in general. I think there's going to be a lot a lot of fantasy points in that game just based on sort of the implied odds and everything. We didn't mention Marcus Smart. Is he sort of a contrarian point guard play tonight?
I think so. I just think, I mean, we were kind of, I mean, one of the reasons why we kind of glossed over him was because we were talking about Jeremy Lin and Moutier, Tony Parker, those guys. So I think maybe because we did that, that's what other people are going to do as well. So I love him at that price tag. I mean, he's still below 5K, and
right.
You know, nice matchup.
He's shown that he has that big sort of big game ability without even having the minutes. So this is kind of a game that it's up in the air who exactly is getting those fantasy points. So maybe I think he's a nice tournament play tonight.
Yeah, definitely. Just because I think, for one, you're likely not going to pay up for Isaiah Thomas. So I think actually still getting, you know, shares of this game, Smart's, you know, the better play there. And, you know, he's taken double-digit shot attempts in 3 of the last 4 games. So like you said, he's kind of coming off the bench and, you know, turning on a little bit more from what we've seen in the past. Back to shooting guard. I can't get behind a lot of these lower guys. You know, you have Manu Ginobili, who's, you know, hasn't been consistent with minutes just because, you know, Pop's there, obviously. But you know, when he does get minutes, I mean, which I think he will tonight.
It's so tough to trust him. Again, a lot of these guys are tournament plays because they're really volatile. But I think Manu's sort of in play for tournaments. I'm not totally sold on him. I think you're looking at. I don't think Troy Daniels is an option after the other night, how they sort of dealt with him. I know a lot of people were on him the other day. But, yeah, I think, well, KCP for Detroit, he's been really consistent lately. I think he's an interesting cash game option, especially with sort of how the roster construction has gone. So that's sort of – you want to pay up for Harden is basically the gist of everything, you know?
Yeah, I mean, on DK it's easy because you can just play Harden and lock it in. But, you know, on FanDuel you got to choose that other one. I think Bradley's your option. As you mentioned, KCP, big minutes eater, has been playing well. You know, if you need that extra, I don't mind Ginobili. I still think, I know it's risky, but I still think he's my favorite lower option.
Troy Daniels could have been something. He could have been something for us, but like even at the minimum, he got 9 minutes last game, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely along those odds.
Maybe it was the fouls, but I don't know. It's just you could have been something, Troy Daniels. We could have had something together.
Moving over to small forward tonight, there are some injury concerns. As I mentioned, Nicholas Batum's out or questionable tonight. Hopefully we get that news early in the day because that's going to impact a lot. PJ Harrison really opens up as a nice bare minimum value play at small forward if he sits. Rudy Gay is also questionable, which has mean Willie Cauley-Stein stepped into a bigger role alongside Cousins, which has worked out very nicely.
Yes, and unfortunately on FanDuel, like that's not going to really work tonight. But yeah, Willie Cauley-Stein's been awesome lately.
Yeah, I mean on DK, obviously that's your play just because it's a cheaper center option. One, you can roster 2 centers, and the other, Cousins is power forward eligible. But I mean, you have LeBron James, you have Kawhi Leonard up there, but it's tough to pay up in this spot tonight because we're paying up at other positions. But I do like Kawhi in this game.
Okay.
I mean, it's definitely a contrarian move because you're going to have to come off someone to kind of fit Kawhi into your lineups. But, I mean –
I think that's kind of why LeBron intrigues me a little bit tonight too, because the ownerships might be lower on both of those players.
Yeah,
you know?
And you know they're a cheaper option, yet they still can, you know, have big time GPP upside.
Right.
So
and I'll be interested how if any strategy changes for Cleveland with the coaching change. You know, it seemed like LeBron kind of took the bull by the horns last game. Yeah. It didn't end well, but 27 shots is a lot for him.
Yeah.
So I'll be interested to see if that trend continues.
Yeah, we always know he has big assist games, but I mean, although he had 12 the game before, we didn't see a lot of high assist games from that in that recent stretch there where they just look disinterested out there. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, James is always a triple double threat, and he is a little bit cheaper, still below 10K on DK. So, I mean, he's definitely a GPP move.
But yeah, I don't know. It would be tough to pay up for them tonight.
Yeah. Looking a little bit lower, I like Danilo Gallinari. Always a favorite of mine in tournaments. Averaging 21, 1 and 4 over the last 5 games, coming off a 30-point game. And you kind of got to hope he hits into that 30 range for real points just because he doesn't do a lot of peripheral stats, but he does have 40-plus fantasy point upside when he's shooting the ball well.
Yeah, and he's stabilized around that 7K range. So it seems like on most nights he's kind of hitting value. So that's a nice safe play, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, we've kind of talked about Atlanta's defense being more average of late this season. So I think Gallinari is a great spot tonight and definitely going to be a low-owned play. But like you said, I mean, he's pretty safe in all formats.
Yeah. If Rudy Gay doesn't play, Omri Caspi, he's still overpriced, but I do like that game. It's not a great matchup either, but I don't know. He's kind of intriguing to me just because of a few games he's had.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the highest scoring game of the night. So, I mean, if you're looking, I mean, Caspi's still, 6,000 is not bad.
5,300 on FanDuel is probably the more intriguing option, though.
Yeah, that's true. And plus, you're rostering 2 of them, 2 small forwards there. So, yeah, I guess he's more in play on FanDuel. I think Jay Crowder is just my favorite option
in that range.
Yeah, because he's only 400 more than Caspi on DK. So, gets Washington, who's struggled against small forwards this season. I mean, it's shown he's played Washington 3 times and averaged 17, 3, and 7. So,
yeah,
he's my favorite mid-range play tonight. But I don't mind paying down a little bit more for Caspi if you need to. That's a decent pivot for me on FanDuel.
Shabazz Muhammad at 4,500 against Cleveland. Is he in play?
He's in play because I'm going to need to punt. I'm going to need some deeper value guys, and he's definitely one I'm on tonight. I mean, he's been finally getting minutes, and it looks like 30 minutes has kind of been the range for him, 28 to 30 over the last few games. And, he played 26 minutes in the Cavs game before and scored 22 points. So I still don't mind punting with him at that price.
Yeah. Yep, he started to not quite like Moutier, but he started to get some consistent minutes, at least off the bench. So
yeah, definitely. If Batum does sit, PJ Harrison coming off a 21 and 10 game with 2 steals, saw 34 minutes. He would be in play for me.
Absolutely. Yep, that's a nice play.
Moving over to power forward. Paul Millsap is questionable tonight. Had personal reasons he missed the last game, but I haven't seen anything yet of him coming back for today. But I think he assumed he was going to come back today, but that's just one to keep an eye on. Which
our buddy here has gone frozen, but we're looking at DeMarcus Cousins on DraftKings. Obviously, you're slotting him in as your top option. Anthony Davis is another nice play, but I just don't think it makes sense to sort of go to him just because he hasn't shown the upside lately of a Cousins, even if it costs more. So maybe you're looking at Davis as a contrarian play, but I don't see him as a real option over Cousins tonight. Go ahead.
With Cousins is dropping 60 fantasy points a night, over the last week or so. He's got 10 straight double-doubles. So
and we look at Anthony Davis as that high upside guy, but he hasn't really had that upside recently,
Yeah. I mean, I think on DK, it's your obvious Cousins is the play. On FanDuel, where there's a ton of value, I mean, I don't see a reason why you can't play him alongside
Right.
Cousins and maybe fade Harden, which is scary to do, but it is a contrarian move because Davis is in a great spot with Houston allowing the most fantasy points per game to opposing power forwards. So, and Davis has dominated them this season, going 26 and 13 on average in 2 games. So, like you said, I mean, he hasn't been great lately, but in a great spot, and we know what he can do.
Draymond Green. Again, that Spurs Warriors game is not one I'm likely touching. I believe you had some statistics on him not being great the past few games against San Antonio.
Yeah, I mean, last season he shot only 26% against them.
Yeah,
which is tough. I mean, the Warriors did take a hit, for most of their starting 5 against the Spurs or when they played the Spurs last season in 3 games. So
which makes sense, and it's basically the same defense, if not better, this year. So It's kind of a tough matchup for him, and especially at his price. I mean, FanDuel 9,400. That's tough to pay up for tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably he's not on my radar at all. And, I just can't see any of these guys at their prices being in play for me on the Warriors side.
Yeah.
Moving down the list here with Dwight Howard likely to be out again tonight. Clint Capella, Terrence Jones, Josh Smith have been the trio to really fill in, but I mean, we just really like Clint Capella and Josh Smith.
Yeah, Josh Smith especially at 400 because you're trying to open up those spots. So that's if you're looking for salary cap relief, that's a nice high upside, a reasonably high upside for 4K.
Yeah.
They kind of just subbed him in. I mean, he literally came over to the team and they're like, all right, you're playing tonight. So, that's a nice option there. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a high usage guy so far. I mean, he's shot the ball 24 times in the 2 games he's been there. And, I mean, five blocks and 4 steals in those 2 games. So, I mean, he only scored 2 real points in the first game and still got 26.
Yeah.
Which is, those are the players I like because even if they're having an off night shooting the ball, they still can produce elsewhere.
So, Jarrell Arthur in play against Atlanta.
Yeah, from what I've read, Kenneth Faried has a significant groin injury, but the last time Faried went off on a stretcher, he played the next night. So I don't know what to make of this guy's injury reports, but it does sound pretty significant to him. He is questionable tonight, but I think he'd be on the wrong side of questionable. I like Arthur as a pivot play from him, being a little bit cheaper down. Played 34 minutes last game and scored 22 DK points. So not a bad matchup against Atlanta, who's been struggling against power forwards of late.
And then I'm not touching Trey Lyles. We looked over sort of his games. His big games have been against really weak opponents. So it's kind of like he's sort of a matchup play at this time. I wouldn't touch him tonight.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I mean, I think you prefer Jarrell Arthur in that spot, or just or Josh Smith, like you mentioned. So I think those are your deep value plays that you're playing at power forward tonight to pair up alongside Davis, pair up alongside Bogey, just to get some salary relief. Move over to center. Dwight Howard, we mentioned, is out, but it doesn't benefit any other true centers on Houston's team. Hassan Whiteside is questionable tonight, but we already mentioned we're not touching that Bulls-Miami game. Even if Whiteside came back and played, he'd be in a really good spot, but health-wise, I just don't think he's there.
Right. And the only guy in that game, it's kind of like Derrick Rose has been scoring a lot, but he hasn't really been doing anything else. So even him at that price, it doesn't really make sense. So I don't know, that whole game in general.
Yeah, it's just not one to target for me. I mean, I'm just glad it's a bigger slate because then I would be forced to if it was a 45-game slate.
Yeah, that'd be a drag to watch that game. Marcin Gortat at 7,100. I think he's I'd say he's pretty much a lock for a double-double tonight.
Oh, for sure.
I think he's a really nice cash game play, and I think he even has some tournament upside.
Yeah, I mean, he's averaging 16 and 12 in the last 3 games. And like you mentioned, I mean, it's tough because FanDuel, you're one center, but I do like him on DK. I think he's a cash game center for me. going up against Boston, not a good rebounding team. They struggle defensively down low. So, I mean, they have a team total of 107 tonight, and we were kind of talking, where's that going to come from? Because Boston's pretty good against guards, but they're going to get his. But you got to expect Gortat to really put on a show tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Looking a little lower, Tim Duncan is out, but it doesn't really create any opportunities that are on our radar for guys like Boris Diaw or David West. I think we're kind of really looking at Willie Cauley-Stein on DK for a cheap center.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's been great since they started to increase his minutes, and he's been earning more and more. So this doesn't seem like it's going away anytime soon. And until they really start to bump up his price, I'm going to be trying to fit him into lineups every night. Yeah,
no, I'm definitely with you there. I mean, he's got double-digit rebounds in the last 3 games and a double-double in the last 3. And, with that 7-foot body of his, he's definitely got blocking upside.
Super athletic. So those steals and blocks, I don't think that's a fluke of any type, Yeah.
Yes, I mean, it's a pretty easy night at center. I mean, you're either going to pay down with those guys with Willie Cauley-Stein, or you're going Cousins on FanDuel. I mean, 100%. It's just so hard not to do.
Right.
Anyone else you're eyeing here at center?
Not really. I mean, Marc Gasol's been awesome lately, but I just don't know if I can trust him tonight.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a nice pivot, but as you mentioned, it's the trust is the issue here.
Yeah. So I'm probably not going to play him, but he has been pretty good lately.
Yeah. If you look at the Charlotte situation, Spencer Hawes has been seeing the bigger minutes lately, 27, 32, 34. I mean, just 4,100 on DK, and you're looking at that game, it's kind of like the other night with the Pacers where we loaded up on guys from that game because it was going to be so high scoring. So he could be in play for me. I think he's a nice GPP move because I think he's going to be lower owned than the other guys there.
Yeah, and he's not a great player, but he's in there, getting rebounds and doing stuff.
Yeah,
he's just kind of there, and being there sometimes is good enough in DFS. So
yeah, he's a guy you wouldn't want on your real team, but on your fake teams, maybe.
So yeah, I mean, if he's in there and playing over 30 minutes, he's a good bet to get over 10 rebounds. So yeah, that's all you can really ask for at 4,100.
All right, so to wrap it up here, who's your favorite? Who's going to be the highest scoring player below 5K tonight? And we'll go on DraftKings.
Oh man, I like PJ Hairston if things work out for him, right?
Yeah. If Batum sits, I mean, he definitely has some big upside. I'm going to go with Darrell Arthur if Fareed sits. He's going to be my guy.
Right. It's kind of tough right now because we don't have those injury updates. But
because it's 3 a.m. in the morning.
But so yeah, I think PJ Hairston and then Darrell Arthur. Yeah, those are interesting plays.
And then if they both somehow don't work out, we can just both take Marcus Smart.
Yeah.
We're on the same page there. That's going to wrap it up here at the Mints to Win It. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com, Colossus, tools, tons of articles and content for all your major sports and dogs.